Hello, everyone. Russ, what do you got today?
All right, so I saw an interesting commercial on television for Facebook groups, and it was the most far-fetched commercial I think I've ever seen in my life because it was a dad and a daughter, which is great. They're getting ready to go to their first baseball game. The dad's a big Met fan. The daughter's a Yankee fan. So the dad's wearing his Met jersey. He's trying to give the daughter a Met jersey. She wants no part of it. She gets the Yankee hat, the Yankee jersey. They show up at Yankee Stadium. The dad's still wearing the Met jersey. Nobody has said a word to him. Nobody's throwing anything at him. So already there's a problem there.
Nobody's throwing anything at him.
And then the dad messages some other friend and from a Facebook group and says, "Hey, this is my daughter's first game. I was following your lead." And the guy in the Facebook group is like, "Yeah, that's great, but like you're still a Met fan." And I'm thinking, if life were only that civilized between Met and Yankee fans, life would be fantastic. But it's not.
Yeah,
they
no.
hate each other.
What they cut out is the Yankee fans in the right field bleachers throwing batteries at the Met fans.
And the cursing that would go on in that Facebook group, like, are you effing kidding me? Like, come on, man. It's like, come on, Facebook.
That's a great.
Obviously, there would be talk like, obviously this is not your daughter. But your mailman must have been a Yankees fan or something.
Right.
Russ, I got to tell you, you made my week this week. I don't remember when it was, but you'll probably remember when. I really enjoy the fact of all the things that you care about. It really makes my day. Like, you're still the only man who I've ever seen comment on another man's pants. With Ricky Pietro. And I saw one of those today. There was I don't even know how you got into it. I can't remember, but you were outraged about Steak and Shake. And I just started laughing. Like, I just can't imagine anybody I know that would actually give a darn one way or the other about the fate of Steak and Shake. But you had an opinion on it, and it made me laugh.
I did, and I'll tell you what happened. So we were coming back, I believe it was from the draft or the combine. It may have been the combine. And we all seemed to stop at this same rest stop that had a Steak and Shake. We were like, oh, my God, this is going to be great. So we go up to the Steak and Shake, and it's a bunch of us. There's Canadians, there's Americans. And so we go, hey, we're all starting to order. And they're like, yeah, the shake machine's broken. Like, what are we talking about? This is Steak and Shake. You don't have one shake machine in the back? And they're like, no, we've got this big thing that runs like 15 of them, and that's all we got. It's broken. And we're like, all right, look, we understand. So then the guys start ordering hot dogs. They're like, we're out of hot dogs. And we're like, what the hell is going on here? Like,
yeah.
It was a weekend too. So it was like, so then we all order other stuff, and we're eating the French fries, and the French fries were just hot garbage. Like, it weren't good.
Well, the shakes in their name. Like, that's ridiculous that they wouldn't have a steak.
Yeah, they don't have
Like, you don't have a single serve one in the back that you can make a shake with as a backup. Like, it's crazy.
I don't normally make a habit of having shakes now because I'm diabetic, so I can't. But my one exception is in March around St. Patrick's Day when McDonald's has the Shamrock Shake. I like the Shamrock Shake. So I go there one Friday night. I'm hankering for a Shamrock Shake. It's 10:30 at night. I go to the drive-thru. I order my whatever hamburger and French fries, and I ask for a Shamrock Shake, and they tell me that the shake machine is closed. It's not broken. It's closed, and this is a 24-hour McDonald's. I basically said over the intercom, "Stick your burger and fries," and drove away.
Yeah, I mean,
did you feel better for doing that? Or?
I did. It was cleansing. It was definitely cleansing.
Oh, come on, Kevin. Back in the day, I guarantee you yelled at the Jack in the Box clown.
I never did. I did go to Jack in the Box because I went to college in the 70s. So at 2:00 in the morning when you went to college in the 70s, there was a need. There was a need to go get something to eat, and the Jack in the Box is where we went. But I never yelled at the clown, and I used to go in. But there was right. I went to Eastern Michigan University, and there was not far from campus we could go. But I actually have a hockey thing that I actually wanted to talk about. Let's start the show, and then I'll bring.
The one thing I want to get into the hockey thing, but you remember the one thing that do you remember the show that Stephen Colbert and Stephen Carell started out on, which was by what's his
The
name?
Daily Show.
No, not that one. No, before that, the guy who was the church lady on Saturday Night
Dana
Live.
Carvey.
Okay, Dana Carvey had a show. Remember, it was on very briefly.
Oh, I don't remember that. No.
I don't either.
It's hilarious. You got to watch the highlights of it.
I do my best to avoid Stephen Colbert.
No, I know, but I love Stephen Colbert and Stephen Colbert and Stephen Carell did a couple things on this, and they were just basically improv actors at this point. They were really early in their career, and one of the things they did was guys was called stupid pranks, and one of the pranks was, and they also had Germans saying sweet things, which is the funniest thing. Two guys in German accents saying that's a beautiful kitten you have there or whatever. It's just really funny. But the stupid pranks, one of them always remembers, they go to a Jack in Box. They pull up the Jack in Box, they order their food, they pull up and the guy says that'll be $12.75, and they hand him $15 and they speed off. That was the prank. It's like, we paid. Anyway, yeah, it was always hit me. Always hit me. Anyway, it was a good show, man. Someone has to remember.
I don't.
No,
all right, it's pretty fun.
Let's start the show, please.
Let's go. Ready? Okay. Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, May 21st, 2019.
I'm an unamused Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, USA Today Sports.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And Kevin, what do you got? You got something to start with?
Well, I just want to talk about this because I ended up talking to Paul Correa the other day. I don't know whether I've said on this podcast before, but I just finished working with Stu Grimson on his book, and the foreword is being written by Paul Correa, who's a very close friend of Stu Grimson's. And I called Paul, and I worked with him on creating the foreword, and I reminded him of going to practice one time, and I said, maybe you did this all the time, but I only saw it one time. And I said, unless I've totally misremembered this. And he goes, oh no, you didn't misremember. I saw in practice, after practice, Paul Correa working on a backhand one-timer. And I asked him about it after practice, and he said that he's working on it. He was trying to perfect it. So when the puck came to him across like that and he was on his backhand, he would just play it like a normal forehand.
Wow.
And I asked him whether he had actually used it in the game, and he did. And so here's my question to you. Have any of you ever seen anybody actually attempt, with a puck coming across on the backhand on a one-timer? As
like
opposed
a full-fledged backhand, like a wind-up backhand type thing?
Yeah.
Not at any level. I've seen a lot of hockey already.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, me neither. But when you think about it, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
If you
because normally I think what had happened is the guy who's looking at that pass potential wouldn't make that pass.
Right.
Because he wouldn't think the guy was in a position to score.
You wouldn't at all. I mean, I somehow remember a guy, because there's a couple players in the league that will actually shoot opposite-handed once in a while.
Yeah, Correa would do that. I've seen him do that.
Yeah. That always fascinates me because you don't always see it. There's certain little things that you don't necessarily recognize, but that does happen more than you think. Like your guys will actually switch their sticks up on a certain play to get it to use it the opposite way.
I do feel like I need to mention this because you're mentioning Paul Correa. What I think gets forgotten, and I think there's a guy who actually has won a couple points better, but at the University of Maine, Paul Correa had 100 points in 39 games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Think about that. 100 points in 39 games.
Yeah, that was just such an epic thing.
I think his brother had some astronomical season too.
Yeah, I believe he did too.
Yeah, I can't remember the numbers, but Paul Correa, I want to remember about him. Remember when Hockey Night in Canada, put him on an end-to-end rush and they timed him how long it took him? Like it was some incredible time. I don't remember what it was, but I do remember that they had that, and the video kind of it went viral. Like how quick he was able to move down the ice.
It's sad that the one thing, and don't get me wrong, he had a phenomenal career, but the one thing I remember about Paul Correa, and it wasn't exactly a shining moment for him, was him getting destroyed by Scott Stevens in the 03 Cup final, and then coming back I think it was less than a few minutes later, and scoring a goal. It wasn't.
I was there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was amazing because I mean nowadays he would be in the dark room and he'd be kept off the ice, and he came right back and scored a goal. So that to me, it's just, I mean, that's a sign of greatness in my mind.
Actually, Kev, Steve Correa had 65 points. But for Steve Correa,
that's it. Oh wow, I remember him having more than that. Yeah,
but for him that was really great.
Yeah.
Did he play for Anaheim too?
No,
Vancouver. Oh, okay. Yeah, Steve Correa played with Vancouver. Yeah,
That's right.
Wasn't Grimson a member of that team, Kevin? Wasn't he on the 03 team?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting story about Grimson is a lot of people thought he was going to be captain of that team.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Back in those days, I wrote one of my first ever articles, and it was for a magazine, and I wrote it on Stanislav Chistov. Now, I had my website already. I was writing stuff for my website, but this was like me starting to branch out into other areas. And yeah, Chistov was a kid that looked like he had a lot of promise and was playing in that series, in that cup.
Oh wow. Jeez. All right, let's get into this cup a little bit here.
Well, let me just update the news here because just reported by a number of people, Chris Johnston from Sportsnet, Kevin Kurds, that Carlson and Hurdle are out, and Pavelski is a game time decision for tonight. Sorry to say, plan the funeral dirge for the Sharks because with those three out, I don't know how they beat the Blues.
Sound the bagpipes if they don't play.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's not go that far yet. I mean, come on, we do have a game. They are in game 6.
Wow, that's three. That's three key players.
It is 3 key players. But have we learned nothing? Have we learned nothing? I mean, like, first of all, the St. Louis Blues fans will tell you that this is the worst possible thing that can happen. I have a Blues fan who is like such a. I mean, if you're a Blues fan and your team has never won a Stanley Cup, they're looking at this like, oh, just when everybody thinks the Blues are favorites, the Blues are fans always feel like they're done.
Kevin, I'm not saying it's impossible that San Jose wins and forces a game 7, but with the loss of 2 and possibly 3 key players, it doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't. Let me address that, but I want to go back so that our listeners and watchers don't think I'm crazy. What did you ask me about which team Grimson was on? I thought you were asking me, did he play with Korea in Anaheim?
Correct.
Okay. Well, what year would that have been?
It was 03, wasn't it?
The
year they went to the Cup final with Babcock as the coach.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, no. He was actually out of the league by then. I thought you were talking about in his first year as the captain. When he was then they thought he was going to be the captain. So I had zoned out for there, and I thought, I'm not sure we were talking about the same year. So anyway, I mean, it will be hard, but it not impossible. I mean, we've seen that the one thing about the Sharks is they have a lot of depth of talent there. Now, can they really do it? You wouldn't think so, but I wouldn't rule it out. But Martin Jones is going to have to be unbelievable.
That's what
the one thing about the Blues that's so remarkable, and I just like people don't even talk about their drought, but it's 49 years since they've been in the final. Like one of their goalies, and I even wrote this, one of their goalies was Glenn Hall. He's 87 years old now. so the last time in, he's one of their goalies, and now he's 87, and they make it back in. So this is a big time deal for them to get in the final, and somewhat coincidental that could end up being the Bruins because that the last final they were in was the famous Bobby Orr flying like Superman photo that was the
which is what, like 49 years ago, right? 50 years ago?
49 years ago.
I think it was May 10th, 1970. I think that was the
day. So and I think that would be an interesting final. I was covering obviously the Boston series. That's why I'm actually home, and boy, the Bruins are playing well. If you're watching them up close and personal, they got it all going on. They just are so confident, and Rask has never played better in his life.
No.
And this break comes at a really bad time for Rask.
It's a terrible time for them.
Yeah, they're putting a good spin on it, saying, well, he's played a lot of hockey. He can use the time off. No, he's hot. He's, he sees everything the puck just looks gigantic to
no one
them.
wants. I mean, the really fascinating thing this year about teams have swept teams. I'm sure we've talked about this before, but it really is fascinating that the two teams that swept teams got swept after the breaks this year,
Right.
and then one team, the other team that swept a team, Columbus, only won two of 4 against Boston. So the teams that swept a team and then came back the next round were a combined 2-12 in their playoff round.
Well,
so time off has been a horrible thing for people.
Well, it always is.
Yeah.
I'm always on radio, and they always ask me, now, do you think it's good that they'll have the time off and they heal from all the injuries, or do you think it's better if they play right away? It's always better when you play right away.
Right.
It's not even a question of that, because I guarantee you Boston will look sluggish when they come back. It's just no getting around. I mean, I remember a player telling me that he felt if you didn't skate for 48 hours, you've lost, your conditioning, and if you didn't play for 3 days, you're not as sharp. And he really believed that. So, and they're going to be off 11, 12 days.
And they're such creatures of habit, like you get out of that rhythm of every other day, which they love so much, but the weird thing about this one is, say the Blues do win tonight, the Blues will still have 6 days off. So it's like,
right.
So it's not like one team's getting the super long break and the other team's coming in. I mean, 6 days is still too long.
It's the great equalizer. Yeah.
So it's really not going to matter. I mean, I know the NHL, I guess they're up against Memorial Day weekend and a lot of stuff that happened here, but I really wish they could have gotten it going a little bit earlier. But I guess the earliest you could do would be Saturday, and that's like.
Well, it's the 27th is locked in. As soon as
it's all locked in now. Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as it went, it was guaranteed to go at least 6 games. The 27th was locked in. Plus, I'm assuming, Kev, they don't want to go head to head against the NBA final. So I'm sure they probably tried to schedule it so they wouldn't go head to head against, say, Golden State and Milwaukee or Golden State and Toronto. I mean, I know that the fan bases are usually not the same, but there might be people who want to watch both things, and usually they try not to have conflicts in that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that has to do with it. Although, it'd be nice if we could had an earlier start, just so that we don't extend too far into June. So
that's a fair point.
And come right up against the draft, which is like, the teams that are still playing right now, they really are up against it when it comes to the draft. I mean,
I will say this, at least this year, although still it could have been a problem, it doesn't interfere with the combine. Somebody like me could actually go to the cup and the combine.
Right.
Previous years you couldn't, and I still don't understand why the NHL just doesn't make the combine a week early or 2 weeks later. Like, I just don't understand.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. I never did have understood that. So.
You know what I think it is, Russ? I think it's because players are playing in the World Championships. You're not going to get Kako over to Buffalo. The World Championships end on the 30th of May. The combine begins at the 1st or 2nd.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's I will say, if you're not covering the final in Boston, you're saving yourself or your company a ton of money, because the price of hotels in Boston.
Oh my God.
It's unbelievable. Like I'm used to this because a cab driver told me that within Boston proper, there are 32 colleges, and within 12 miles, there's 64 colleges, and they all have graduation May and June. Yeah. And all of the hotel rooms are gone. And I looked for, during the Stanley Cup final, for what availability of hotels, and I actually showed my wife. I said, "You're never going to believe this. They range from $500 to $800."
A night.
Yeah, night. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
I'm like 45 minutes out, a half hour. Actually, not 45 minutes. Like 35 minutes out, a half-hour train ride, and that's like $80 a night. So I got a deal. But
yeah, that is. Yeah,
you got really lucky. I'm for the first time ever doing the dreaded staying with family up there. Like I've never, I usually, I actually enjoy the hotel experience and just getting away and being, like not having to entertain or do anything, but I have family that's nice enough to bring me in, and they live in Framingham. So they live right like outside. And so it's going to be about 30 minutes for me too.
Yeah.
Via train.
I will suggest this: when you're at your family's house, don't treat that room like your hotel room.
My hotel room? Yeah.
I've seen what you do in your hotel rooms. Don't do it.
My family tends to explode whenever we arrive anywhere. We've always said that.
For the first time ever, and people were watching, they probably think I live some sort of sheltered life. For the first time ever, I'm going to be staying at an Airbnb for the draft. And I'm a little hesitant about it, but I'm also, it's like, okay, instead of
second time ever. We in Chicago, you stayed.
Well, I wasn't the one who purchased it. I just glommed on after the fact. But it'll be an interesting experience. It's downtown, so I've never been to Vancouver either, so I'm getting excited for that.
Well, I definitely am looking forward to either one of the Western cities too. Just to think that both. I'm hoping personally for San Jose because I've got friends out there, and like I said, my wife's and my wedding anniversary, my 20th anniversary is the day of Game 2 in Boston, which is fantastic. But the 29th. But yeah, so that next weekend would be a fantastic trip for her and I to go out to San Jose and visit friends. But I don't think that's going to happen. It doesn't look likely. It looks more like
whatever will inconvenience the greatest number of journalists.
That's right, Kevin. You know how it works.
I wanted to bring up too. I had an interesting discussion with the team official who told me that who benefited the most from one of the sweeps that happened in the playoffs, and I said, which sweep? And he said, well, the Tampa one. And I said, well, Boston. Boston benefited. He goes, nope, Detroit. He said because they swept. Yzerman's announcement could be done earlier, and now he had more time to prepare for the draft, and now he will run the draft and not the old regime. So
that makes sense.
He said that most every run around the league says, "Wow, that's a real benefit for them," because he wouldn't have called and said, I'd like to leave the team as long as the team was still in the playoffs.
Well, let me ask you something about that, Kev, because I know that previous to Yzerman getting the job in Detroit, there was a lot of speculation that Detroit would be one of these teams with a lot of cap space that they have, that they would be one of the offer sheet teams, potentially offering an offer.
There's not going to be any offer sheet.
Right. Do you agree that Yzerman is not going to go that direction?
The Red would have never have done that. Okay. Ken Holland is one of the ones who's explained to me why you don't do offer sheets. He's told me that a couple of times, and he's laid it all out of why they don't work and why anyone doesn't do it. And he said it's always fun to read you guys speculate about them, but he said it always bears repeating. First of all, to make an offer that's onerous on the other team, it's also onerous on your team.
Right.
He said that's always forgotten. So you can do it so you can hurt that team, but if for some strange reason they say, now you can have the player, which they probably wouldn't do. He said it's going to hurt your team because it disrupts your salary cap. But mostly, he said you shoot yourself if you don't match, because then they'll just come after you more and more. So, you have to do it. But I've had numerous GMs tell me that, it's just fruitless to do it. That's why it doesn't happen. So
you have an update, and Mike, if this isn't different than what you said, sorry, but I'm going to say it anyhow. It turns out Hurdle and Carlson are not even on the trip.
Well, they said that there was no stall for them in the San Jose locker room, so they said
they're not even. They didn't even travel.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, basically they shut down Carlson in the middle of the second period when they were down 3-0, which was an indicator that he was obviously playing at less, I would say 50%, because sometimes he didn't even look like he could skate. So, like I said, I think San Jose's in deep trouble, and if they get to a Game 7, great. But I think right now, if your aim as a fan is to see the Bruins lose, you want the Blues, because the Blues, I think, are a healthier team and might be better. Better set up to give the Bruins, I think, a good fight, because the Blues are a pretty physical team. I think they can combat the Bruins' usual MO of getting feisty. Guys like Patrick Maroon will stick up and provide a little jam for the Blues, whereas I think San Jose is more of a skill team. Their skill is unbelievable. But with all these guys hurt, I don't know whether they would be able to put up a good fight against the Bruins.
I'll tell you who I'm rooting for as a player. So I just wrote about him on EP Ringside, a site that I write for, and it's Elite Prospects. And Jacob Middleton, who was the last pick, he was the last pick of the Kings in the draft in 2014, is a member of the Sharks because he's signed with the Sharks. He's played 3 games this year. He hasn't played in a playoff game, but he is one of the Black Aces. That would be an amazing thing because I would almost bet there has never been, like in the NFL, there's Mr. Irrelevant. That guy has ever played in a Super Bowl or even, in a playoffs, rather, in a conference final. And this will be amazing if, like, the last pick in the draft, and I'm sure it's been done before because, Russians and Swedes had, in the years that there was, you never thought you would get those players. There were guys that were last pick.
Right.
But in the modern era, I doubt there's ever been anybody that has played as high as a conference final. And so it'd be cool if he got in there. He's a defenseman. He's pretty good.
That's a really cool story. I love that story.
Yeah, me too.
I got an interesting stat that to throw out to you guys. I thought that was fascinating to me about this postseason, in general postseason. Did you see this? Since 2014, who has scored the most goals in the Stanley Cup playoffs? So that's 5 years. So
a team or a player?
Player, because the guy who's second on this list. I mean, Ovechkin's first.
Sure.
That's pretty obvious, but Couture's not second.
Jake Gensel.
Nope. So the other guy,
Eastern or Western Conference?
No, he's still playing. I'll give you that.
Oh,
Pavelski.
Nope. This does not seem right to me because I don't. It's funny, but it is. I checked it. It's totally right. Like the number 3 guy would be Kucherov. Number 4 is Malkin. Number 5 is Crosby. Number 1 is Ovechkin. But number 2 is, with 29 goals, Vladimir Tarasenko.
Yeah.
Which I've always seen him as an underperformer in the playoffs, like in general. That's how I've viewed him, at least.
No, I think what it is. It's not that he's an underperformer. It's just that the everybody's expectations are so high for this guy that he's almost going to guarantee to let you down unless he leads his team in scoring every playoffs, basically.
Yeah, and there's always a discussion about his 5-on-5 play as
right.
It's he's gotten his goals on the power play. So
yeah, no, it's really true.
Well, okay, I want to transition to this, Kev, because I think the most fascinating story or stories between now and the draft is teams that are going to be in cap difficulty looking to relieve themselves of that difficulty. And I'll point out, Vegas right now, which is, it's hilarious that the team that had a completely clean slate starting out as an expansion team are now over the cap. They have a David Clarkson contract that they could probably trade for adding a draft pick and alleviating that themselves of that. But there are rumors out there about Colin Miller, one of the defense who played well in the first season with the Knights. Now, 3 years left in the contract, being shopped around possibly because he was in Gallant's doghouse, and now they need the cap relief. And I know Toronto and a few other teams are interested. But just those stories, him, Ryan Callahan, there's a number of them around the league. And to me, how these teams are able to get out from underneath sort of cap jail is what I think is going to be fascinating over the next few weeks.
I couldn't agree more. I think there are several teams that are looking to move players. And, one of the issues is I don't think it's going to be as easy as some people think because, the teams that you would normally go to, that have a lot of cap space, they don't want to give it up,
Yeah.
You can't keep sending every player to the Coyotes, so you have to, figure out and, would the Red Wings take Miller because their defense isn't very good? I don't know. Like, we don't really have a good handle on how Yzerman views this rebuilding.
Right.
So I think he's going to be the mystery man in terms of we don't know what he was thinking. Like, we knew that Ken Holland thought that they were going to be able to compete this year, but Yzerman said at his press conference that he thought they were to be patient, that it was going to take a long time. So I don't know if he was
Yzerman's right.
So
one of the things that Yzerman can do is something that Lou Lamoriello did in Toronto is, like, say for example, he calls up Julian Breezeball and says, "I'll take Ryan Callahan off of your hands. He's got 1 year left at 5.8, but I want Taylor Radish as part of the deal. I want a prospect."
Yeah, no, and there's been a lot of speculation in Detroit that could happen. That they would bring in Callahan to be kind of a veteran leader and so forth. So I mean that could happen. But they got a lot of you look at their prospect list, and they have a lot of top forwards that that they don't even have room now to kind of put on the team. What they really need to get is young defensemen. So
and that's where I was going to go, Kev. So where they're picking, there's nobody they can get defensively that's going to step right in. It's impossible.
Well, I don't even think there's a defenseman they even like there.
Right, and so
they're going to take another forward.
If they wanted to get Bowen Byron, who I don't even think could step right in, they would have to trade away a lot. So the biggest thing, now they could get a defenseman there, but you're right. They may not like him because there's like 3 standout defensemen. I like Soderstrom. I think Moritz Seider is actually pretty underrated, the big German kid. But again, to pick him 8th is a little early. And there's one more.
Yeah, I don't see him taking a defenseman there. I really don't. So.
I don't think they will. So my point is, when Mike Green is your number 1 defenseman, and he's aging and you're not going to have him for more than another year or two, yes, you are going to have to either trade for that number 1, which is really unlikely, or draft it. And so Chalowski's not a number 1. Nobody in their system's a number 1. So
not even top pairing. They don't even think they have a top pairing.
Right. They don't. And that's why it's going to take a few years for them to become a contender because of that reason.
Well, I mean, you can link that into what Eck was reporting on his blog today about.
Yeah.
And now again, I'm a skeptic until it actually happens. I'm not going to believe it.
This is a rumor you should be very skeptical about,
right?
I mean, but it's not even a rumor as much as it's an exploratory thing. Like, I'm trying to come up with ways of saying it differently, but this is not a rumor as much as this is a couple teams that I've talked to, people within those teams that are exploring the possibility of doing this, and seeing what it would take. And because
we're talking Drew Doughty.
Talking about Drew Doughty, and Drew Doughty is extremely expensive cap space wise, coming off of a really rough year. But with a team that's rough, Drew Doughty can still play. Most people think Drew Doughty has a few years left in him. Does he have 8 years left in him at the price that you're gonna have to pay for him? Is a big question, but
I think he does. I mean, he plays a crap load of minutes. I mean, I think you can't look at Drew Doughty's worth at just points. Right. His worth is time on the ice, getting the puck out of his own end. How many zone? If you look at his zone entries, I'm sure they're really good because most of the time he's bringing the puck up and he generally doesn't lose it. Like, there's a lot that Drew Doughty has to do, and there's also a thing where on the team he's on, when Drew Doughty passes the puck, what happens to that puck? A lot of times it's probably going the other way because he doesn't have players now that can hold on to it. So that's going to affect him too. But you put Drew Doughty in the right circumstance and nobody's going to talk about how many more years Drew Doughty has left, or if they can just get better.
Right. I mean, you got to remember, he's 29 years old and he's coming off probably the worst year of his career. Does that mean that he's done? Of course not. He's still, I think, one of the top defensemen in the league, but he's making $11 million. He's got a no movement clause, which means he controls where he wants to go. I know that one of the teams that you mentioned in connection to this act was Toronto. I know that Elliot Friedman reported, it was Chris Johnston that reported about a month ago that the Leafs were in on a big name defenseman before the deadline. He didn't specify who, but by process of elimination, in my mind, it was either Trouba or Doughty. And that it would have entailed them moving out players that were on the roster to clear cap space. That still pertains now. If they were in on it, they would probably have to be Nylander and another big contract like a Kadri or a Zaitsev or something like that. And that's not even probably enough. They would probably have to be draft picks involved. And then you'd have 4 players over $10 million if you sign Mitch Marner. That's like the Tampa Bay Lightning after they won the Cup with LeCavier, Richards, St. Louis, and Boyle eating up so much of the cap space they didn't have enough players to put on the team. So I don't know if I can see any way that the Leafs got involved in a Doughty deal.
Yeah. Kevin, what are your thoughts on Doughty moving possibly?
I just don't see it. Anything is possible because Wayne Gretzky got traded once, but but I don't see that happening. He's a premium player. When they talked about rebuilding, they talked about Kopitar and Doughty building around them. It's an extended period. It's a lot of money. The limitations is, it's just too complicated. I mean, you sit around and talk about it over the table. But
yeah, and that's all that's happening. And you just don't know what LA's think. I mean, LA was thinking that. I agree with you. That has been their thinking, but at the same time,
well, I think LA is in a similar position to Chicago. They can't move the big contracts like Kopitar and Doughty because they probably wouldn't get equal value for them. But
at least their players are, still at the peaks of their. They're like Chicago would never consider trading Patrick Kane. I mean, why would they? He's playing at an incredibly high level. He's, they would rather. I mean, their issue is it's time for Seabrook and Duncan Keith to go.
Right, and in LA, it's a similar situation with Dustin Brown. The Kovalchuk contract is a boat anchor. Jeff Carter, Toffoli is 1 year away from UFA. I mean, they may buy out Dion Phaneuf. There's ways for them to clear a lot of dead money and a lot of money that's being not wasted, but some of them are still good players. But they might be able to move on from those guys and be able to get something back and free up a lot of cap space.
Yeah, I mean, Drew Doughty is not a problem,
right?
So why mess with it?
Well, but you also can't move your problems. I mean, we're talking about they can't move Jeff Carter. There's no way they can move Jeff Carter.
Unless the place that Jeff Carter wants to go.
Right.
Well, yeah, he's already said flat out he won't go anywhere.
I'm really shocked that Jeff Carter is this hard to work with.
Is this what?
I'm very shocked that Jeff Carter is this hard to work with.
You really are, yeah. I mean, Anaheim, perhaps. I mean, the only thing you could think of is he moves Anaheim, so he doesn't actually have to physically move.
How about trading him to Columbus again?
Yeah, they would like it. They would take him in a second.
Yeah, that would be great.
I'm sure he would love that. The big name defenseman, and Eck and I have sort of butted heads on this, but the big name defenseman I think is not very likely, but could be moved is Subban. I
think he will be moved.
Okay, because now do you think it's because they want to re-sign Yossi on an extension and then trying to clear space, or is it just a changing up the chemistry? What's your feel on that?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't think so yesterday, but
I think it's everything. I think that they realized that something was rotten in Denmark last season, and they got to make changes. The big defensive four wasn't as dominant as they had been.
Right.
Like Ekholm was good in regular season. He was atrocious during the playoffs. Ryan Ellis wasn't as good as he's been in the past.
Yeah.
Subban, he helped them get to the final that 1 year, but now I think there's concern that with all that he's doing, that not everyone's on the same mission. I don't know that everyone likes Subban being such a media star, even though I think that that Nashville needs a player like that.
You think, some of the players don't like it down there, you think?
Doesn't it?
I don't know. I just have a sense that there's an issue there.
But doesn't that sound familiar? Isn't this the same issue that got him run out of Montreal? Is the fact that
I think it is. So I think it's all that, and they have to, like, their second line was atrocious. Like Kyle Turris is really at the root of their problem. They got thought that they got 20 goals. Maybe it's 21. Russ, look it up if you can. Okay. I think it was 20 or 21 goals out of their top two centers, Johansson and Turris. You can't win in this league with 20 or 21 goals out of your.
Turris has got 5 more years at $6 million.
Absolutely, and so he's untradeable. So they're going to have to do something, and I feel like they feel they're going to have to trade a defenseman. Now maybe they can trade Subban, because he's $9 million.
But only 3 years left.
Only 3 years.
Johansson and Turris 7, so 21 goals. Yeah. At least Johansson had a good year, and he led the team in scoring.
Would they leave Subban unprotected for Seattle?
I'm sorry?
Would they leave Subban unprotected for Seattle?
No, if they don't trade him?
Yeah.
I do have breaking news.
Would they? I wonder.
Because he doesn't have a trade clause. Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Russ, go ahead.
So the breaking news is Calvin DeHaan just underwent shoulder surgery, out 4 to 6 months. People were already starting to give us a hard time when we were saying Carolina could have a very hard time making it to the playoffs next year. I didn't even factor in this. So he's not going to make the opening night roster. That's pretty obvious. Carolina's going to have some problems next year.
Well, let me ask you about this, Kevin, because you were covering that series.
Yeah.
After that series was over with, the commentary about Carolina was, obviously giving them a lot of plaudits for how far they got and what happened, but just the instability that seems to still be there. I mean, we don't know about what Waddell, if he's going to be kicked up to team president or stay as general manager. The Aho situation with the restricted free agent, how much he'll be, how much Dundon is willing to pay him, even going as far as their broadcast group of Forsland and Tripp Tracy being on the last year of their contract. Nothing is nailed down with that organization. And, you would think that everybody would feel good about the fact they got to the conference final, and now all of a sudden this instability and this uncertainty is there.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair criticism. I would say that I'm aware that they feel they're going to get Aho re-signed.
Mm-hmm.
That's from within the organization. Yeah. So I think they're willing to pay him.
Good.
I know they were working on a Forsland deal. If people care about that, I think some people do. I think he's a very good broadcaster. I know there was discussions of a contract during the last series.
Okay.
But I agree. Like, they're going to lose Furlan. That'll hurt them. I think they're going to trade one of their defensemen.
Yeah.
And now with DeHaan out, maybe they won't. But
or maybe they have to get a defenseman back in a deal that they trade a defenseman for.
Yeah, I think originally they were going to trade one, but I don't know now. Maybe they won't. But and I think they were open-minded about who they were going to trade. Like, they like all of their defensemen. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Even Hamilton, even though he has deficiencies, as we all know. I mean, he's offensively, he gives that team a charge. So I don't know that they're strong enough up front, but Aho's going to get better. Teravainen's going to get better. They've got some guys up there. So, but it'll be a struggle next year to make the playoffs, just because it was a struggle this year.
Right. Yeah, and Russ, the one thing that came out this morning, I think it was Waddell was basically doing his end of the season presser, was that they want to bring back Mrazek and McElhinney, and I'm like, and that they may, I'm not sure what the situation was with Darling. I know he's got 2 years left, and they
bought him out.
What they're going to buy? They're going
to buy him out.
Oh, they did buy him out.
That's what I read the other day. I swear.
They're probably
they're going to buy him out. Yeah,
they're going to. Okay.
But in terms, I mean, honestly, I think the goaltending tandem that they had took them as far as they could get. And there's no, if you bring back Mrazek and McElhinney, I mean, there's no improvement there. I mean, do you think? I mean, you could say they got to the conference final with them. So
I know. I wouldn't bring them both back. I mean, I would bring back McElhinney because he sort of gave confidence to the team and anybody else around him, where I don't think Mrazek does that. I think Mrazek's confidence comes from good play, but then when his play suffers a little, then you worry. They're both going to ask for more. So if I'm going to spend UFA money on two goalies like that, the same two, I don't think I can do that. I think I could bring back McElhinney at a price, get him in there, and then I'll get the next best goalie I could get on the market or via trade, another goalie who has some promise and hasn't played enough, that kind of guy. And then I know I've at least got McElhinney as a backup there who's really solid, because nobody's going to call Mrazek solid. You don't know what Mrazek is going to be year to year. And that's what I would do. Now, the good thing for them is Svechnikov will probably have 30 goals next year, and they do have some players. And the reason I said they would struggle to make the playoffs next year, and I didn't know about DeHaan, and we don't know about other injuries, is just because it's so hard to make the playoffs now year after year. Just, 2 consecutive years now, it's not easy to make the playoffs anymore.
Right.
This is what I would say about that. I agree with Russ. I think McElhinney has to be the number one objective. Because good backups have become so important.
Yep.
And he really is a good backup.
Yep.
And the problem is that everybody knows he's a good backup, so you will have to give him a raise. There's nowhere for Mrazek to go, and so I don't think that you'd have to give him a big raise to get him to come back. I don't know where he's going to go. He wants to try to play, so and his numbers really weren't that good.
No.
Like in terms of be able to draw that kind of contract. I think what's really hurt that team too is not being able to sign Fox. They needed to get more out of that trade with Hamilton.
Oh, no question.
Yeah, and I think they felt. Well, I know they felt they were going to be able to sign him, and they misread that.
And it hurts even more now with the news about DeHaan, because more than likely is going to step into the NHL next year, so he could have stepped in. I don't think Carolina is in deep trouble defensively because they have Hayden Fleury, who's a young defenseman, Jake Bean down in Charlotte, who I think is almost NHL ready, so they can survive the first month or two without DeHaan and then be okay.
The problem with Bean is, though, do you really want to bring him in as a third pairing, second power play guy? I wouldn't.
Right.
Because I want him playing all the time because he is a potential number one defenseman, like a number one.
Yes.
So
who are we talking about?
Jake Bean.
Jake Bean. Okay.
And so what I would do is I would really try hard to trade Justin Falk so I can put Jake Bean in there and at least let him start playing the role I need him to play. Because like you said, they have Fleury. You could pick up a veteran defenseman to sort of help you through it.
Sure.
But if you're going to put in Bean and put him on the third pairing, I don't know. You could drop Falk and he can play in any role. He could, and that's fine too.
Well, okay, we're 1 month away from the draft. The draft's on the 21st. And Kevin, I said this last year. I thought there were going to be a ton of trades at the draft before the draft. There were a few, but there weren't as many as we expect. And then
I thought there'd be a ton. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it could be. I think there'll be more because I think the cap restrictions. I think there'll be more hockey deals because I think with a lot of the teams that failed, the favored teams like Pittsburgh and Tampa, all these teams that lost in the first round, I think they're going to be willing to shake things up and move players salary for salary. What do you think?
I agree. I think there will be a lot of trades. I wonder too, and I don't, no one has said this to me. It's just kind of speculation. I'd be interested to get everyone's take on this. Mm-hmm. Historically, we don't have the NFL, at least not a lot, NFL style trades of moving up in the draft. And, sometimes you see it at the bottom of the first round where, if there's a guy still left and you like him,
right.
And, you end up getting a second round pick, but you don't see it as much. But I wonder if this year, because we have special circumstance players where, people are interested in Cole, the U.S. player who's very short and, but is maybe the best goal scorer in the whole thing. And you move up and try to get him. The goalies, Spencer Knight is another one I've heard people say, well, if he's still there at 16 or 17, does somebody try to move up and get him? Just because, if you really need a young goalie, if you have none in your system, he might be a good guy to have. So, and that would play into, trades too. If you can make a big trade, but you're swapping draft picks, you're going from 12 to 8 or, 16 to 9 as part of a deal. Maybe we'll see that as well.
I can tell you this, Kev. I have no inside knowledge, but I believe the Flyers will try and do what they did in Minnesota and try and trade up. I think they are going to try and trade for Caulfield because I do think they are looking for goal scoring down the line. And the fact that he had 72 goals this year doesn't hurt. And I do think he is the best goal scorer in the draft. So I think they're going to try and trade, and they're going to see probably where Caulfield's falling on the board. So it might be Edmonton, it might be Detroit, it might be one of those teams that they end up dealing to try and get Caulfield because the next team might take him. And then the other thing, as far as Knight goes, I could see that too because, again, I always go back, and again, Knight's not Marc-Andre Fleury, but he's really good. I mean, Knight is a very solid, going to be most likely a number one goalie. Nobody's a goalie expert, so I can't tell you with 100% certainty, but I think he could be. Craig Patrick made that trade and traded up for Marc-Andre Fleury. Everybody looks at, Crosby and Malkin and say they were the two important guys for the Penguins, but I always say they could have been there, and if they didn't have Fleury, I don't know if they'd have won the same amount of cups because Fleury meant everything to them at the time. And so I could see somebody trading up to get Knight, Kev. I think you make a great point there.
Yeah, no, I really do agree. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a fun a draft full of trades. I'm talking to so many people, and it's amazing the amount of work that's already going into it. And I wrote it today in my blog as well, that I think that some of the bigger name teams, some of the bigger market teams are going to try to do stuff a couple weeks ahead of the draft too. You're going to see some things happen before the draft, because there's just too much to get done in a short period of time. And there's too many moving pieces that you have to really be careful. I wanted to point out one article that I thought was really good today too, before we get out of here. And that is it's on TV. It's on TVA Sports, so it's in French. But somebody sent it to me, and it was really good. And it's
Je ne sais pas.
No, the gist of it is, and my 5 years of French from reading it and then reading about it in English.
There's Google Translate, Ak. You could use that.
No, I didn't use Google Translate. So the current Rangers general manager, Jeff Gordon, right?
Yeah.
Who, if you remember, he was the interim GM of the Boston Bruins for 4 months.
Don't remind me, Ak. I remember.
I know. You see where this is going. So he was 4 months. He was the interim GM of the Bruins.
Yes.
Right.
In that 4 months, he traded for Tuukka Rask.
Yep.
Yes.
Drafted Marchand and signed Chara. Right.
Well, the Chara thing is a little sketchy, because there was, from what I understand, because Chiarelli was going to be the GM there, that maybe he was just GM in Ottawa.
Well, no, he was coming from Ottawa. Yes, there was definitely some.
So I can't.
Kessel, Lucic.
Yeah, I can't give Jeff Gordon credit for that, but I can give him credit for raping John Ferguson blind, the guy who's now an assistant GM with the Bruins. So Marchand was drafted by him, and he wasn't. That was a hell of a pick. I mean, Lucic
was
that same draft too,
Lucic and Phil Kessel. So.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's the amazing thing is, like, so 4 months, he does this, and then, Chiarelli comes in, and a lot of people, I think, when you look at those key players, still pin it on Chiarelli, like that's Chiarelli's team, which I know you can say it is for sure, but with the others, I mean, I don't know how much Chiarelli was involved in the draft. I don't think he could have been involved in the draft.
No, it was Gordon's thing. I mean, people forget that Gordon is a good judge of talent.
Yeah.
Like, he was very high on Chris Kreider. That was a reason the Rangers got Kreider. Gordon's in on a lot of guys. Like, he knows, he actually goes out there, he gets out there, and he usually has good people in his scouting staff. And so, yeah, I'm not shocked at that.
Yeah, it's pretty, amazing when you think about. I've also heard Chiarelli's name mentioned a little bit with Seattle recently too. So there's a bunch of different possibilities.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if I don't know, like, and I haven't heard this recently, but I'm putting 2 and 2 together from what was rumored last year. I think I maybe mentioned it a couple weeks ago. I would not be surprised if Ron Francis ends up as a senior advisor in Toronto, because Dubas is close to Francis from their days, Sault Ste. Marie. I know Francis is from there. I'm not sure of his relationship with the Grey. I think he may have played for the Greyhounds in junior. But there was a relationship there between Dubas and Francis, and there was some interest after he got fired from Carolina. But he had another year on his contract. That contract expires June the 30th. So you could see, because really, I mean, other than Lawrence Gilman, who's been an assistant GM around the league in a couple different places, there's not a lot of experience helping out Dubas. And I think that Francis would be a good sounding board. So I would not be surprised. Now there might be other opportunities out there, and maybe it'd be a 1 or 2 year pit stop, but I think there's a possibility there.
I would say definitely possible.
Yeah, I think so.
All the time we have for today, guys. Enjoy the games tonight. The game tonight, I would say.
Well, there's another game, but it's an AHL game that I'm going to.
Well, there's the Memorial Cup too, but
and also if you're 8 minutes from now, U.S. and Canada in the World Cup, which is World Championship.
Yeah,
you guys don't watch, but
I'm carving out a section of my day to watch that.
What else are you gonna watch at 2:15 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, Mike? Come on.
I'll listen to Mike Francesa.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, there's a lot of stars playing in this game. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I tried to watch Slovakia, Denmark. I couldn't.
Yes, when the best player on the ice is Matt Martin-Marin. Hey, Carolina, there's your defenseman. Pick up Martin.
But I will say this, only because I watch Hockey Central, that I did see the last second of the shootout where Slovakia won, and it's a pretty big deal because now they may actually get into the Olympics again.
Yeah.
So good for them. But if you think I was going to stick around for like an hour, 2 hours to wait for that moment, no way.
There's other fun moments in the World Championships the last couple.
Yeah, like you could encapsulate the fun moments of the World Championships into like 20 minutes. The whole World Championship so far.
There was Great Britain coming back from 3-0 against France to win. That was pretty crazy because. But the funniest thing in that was hearing the announcer saying Great Britain and France, two teams that don't have a long history of hating each other. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, Great Britain and France.
Yeah,
I think there's a long history of Great Britain and France not getting along.
Their team captain was Lord Wellington.
I think that goes back pretty far, if I remember right. I think France may have pissed some people off back in 1776 in England. Maybe. Yeah, I think there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, their goaltender had a Napoleonic complex.
Yeah, right. So that was pretty funny. And then the other thing was Austria getting relegated by Italy winning in a shootout. It was a pretty big deal. So I like the relegation.
Oh, yeah.
The relegation thing's fun
that
to
was
watch.
Front page news. You're right.
Well, relegation is pretty crazy. So I like that out of it. Anyway, and Germany is starting to really become a power in hockey.
All right, here's the last thing I'll say about the World Championships.
Okay.
Just so people understand. Do not gauge a player. If this is the first time you're seeing a player, any of these young players, any player from another country, don't gauge how they're doing in the World Championships and sort of figure out that that's what they're going to do in the NHL or wherever they're going to play next year. It doesn't work that way. I'm going to tell you right now, scouts put the most weight on the World Juniors of any tournament in the world. Mm-hmm. That is what they put the most weight on. Besides going, regular season to all these games, that's very important. But as far as a tournament, it's the World Juniors. After that, it's like the under-18s and the Hlinka. This is very low on the totem pole for a lot of reasons. Guys literally just joined the team yesterday. It's like, come on.
I hope people put a lot of stock in it because William Nylander is leading the tournament with 15 points.
Yeah.
Last story. There you go.
That's the best example right there.
Right. No, I know. But, it's 2:15 on a Tuesday. Again, like what else? I don't know. For those of us who work at home or on your office or able to watch hockey, it's like you get to watch some great hockey players play at 2:15. You get a chance to watch Jack Hughes play.
There are some soap operas that I'd rather watch, and maybe the replay of Game of Thrones that I've seen.
If your life is that dull and that's exciting, then yes, I agree. It's fine.
It's our job.
It's not my job to watch the World Championships. I'll watch highlights. I'm not watching the games. I'll watch the final game if the right guys are in it. I am not watching it.
Yeah, okay. You don't have to. I'm not making you watch it. I'm just telling you that I think it's more fun than some other things.
It's my job. You sound like you're.
I think it's more fun than
I got my fill of watching Martin Marincin give away the puck during the Leaf season. I don't need to see it for Slovakia.
Whenever USA and Canada play, whenever they play each other, it's always fun. Like to me, and it's like Sweden and Finland when they play, it's always fun, and you want to see. Especially when you've got like a lot of stars playing.
Yeah, Toronto Greenhouse says it right. Louis Erickson's lighting it up. What does that tell you?
Yeah, well, there you go. There you have it. All right, folks, have a good night. Tomorrow night we'll be talking about Game 7 on Thursday. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow.